Hi and welcome back to the channel. Now those of you who subscribe may well know that I've got a Voodoo Hoodoo as my budget hardtail. I purchased it back in 2016 after a 16-year break in mountain biking. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it either. And I wouldn't have a problem keeping it whatsoever, but I now have a replacement hardtail. This video is here to show you how to take a new bike from boxed to ride ready.
Something like this.
Well, here is my Voodoo Hoodoo. I've upgraded a few parts on it. I've loved it, but then I found what is inside this box on the Chain Reaction website and I couldn't refuse. So let's start getting things out. Okay, so yeah, in here we've got the 2021 Vitus Nucleus VRS model with 27.5 inch wheels. Heavily reduced actually. I managed to get it at the price of £514.99 delivered. They say it's going to be a 7 to 10 day delivery. I ordered it later on Friday last week. It is now Wednesday, so I'd class that as a 3-day, within 3 days delivery, going from the Monday. So anyway, I've just popped this open. I've noticed with this box, doesn't actually appear to be any staples in it. I know the last bike that I purchased from Chain Reaction was stapled up. I'm quite liking this packaging. There's a box here just in the top, a smaller one. Let's just have a look to see what we've got inside there. Okay, we have a bell. It's nice. We've got some reflectors. If you're going to be riding it on the road, I would recommend probably using these as a minimum. I'm actually just going to set them aside because I'm not going to be using those. What else have we got in here? There's a couple of zip ties in there. General suspension fork manual. That looks to be like frame protection, maybe for the chain stay. And there's a couple more stickers there as well for areas on the frame where you might find your brake cables, your dropper seat post cables, or your gear cables rubbing away at the paint. So if you want to protect that, definitely pop those on too. Okay, we've got another little box here. Congratulations on your new bike. Inside here, oh, this is pretty cool. Okay, I didn't get this for the other one. Obviously pedals. I did get some pedals for the other one, but I didn't use them. They are very basic pedals. These will get you up and running, so if you just want to chuck them on the bike to have a bit of a ride, do that. You may well have a preference of pedals that you'd want to put on for the long term. So yeah, pedals. We've also got a nice looking multi-tool actually. Okay, we've got a selection of Allen keys on there. Couple of Torx ends, screwdrivers, and what is that in the middle? Not actually sure. Oh no, okay, so that goes on to the 6mm Allen key to make it maybe into an 8. That's quite cool. Okay, nice little touch. Let's pop all that back together. If you haven't got a multi-tool, might be worth taking it out on a ride with you, because you never know. We've also got a 15mm spanner with a nice rubberized handle on it. So that would be for putting these pedals on if you wanted to use that to put the pedals on. Alternatively, you can use an Allen key from the back side of the crank arms to get these in position too. But yeah, it's another nice one just to keep in the toolbox. And I think that's probably it. Yeah, so that's what we've got in there. That's nice. So now we're down to the business end. Let's dive deeper into here and see how we are packed. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. Let me just grab you. Okay, so down in here we have got the bike itself. So the rear wheel looks to be in position. The front wheel is disconnected. I don't know if this is what they class as a small box. I think the last bike that I had from Chain Reaction actually had the front wheel in position as well, but no bother. We've got the bars which are disconnected, packed up down the side. It looks fairly well packed. Some people do report that their frame does get damaged in transit. My box looked pretty good on the outside, so I'm hoping that everything is going to be pretty good on the inside. Let's start getting this out. Okay, it's just looks like a box, but it's being used as a spacer so the frame doesn't slap around inside the main box itself. I'm gonna, what have we got here? We've got saddle down here. Okay. Have a quick look at that. Got a nuke-proof Neutron saddle on there. Yeah, looks right. You can sit on it to take a weight off your legs when you're pedaling. Right, next up I'm going to go for the wheel. Let's take the front wheel out. There we go. So we've got WTB Vigilantes. These are not tubeless ready tyres. However, the WTB STI30 rims are tubeless ready. So if you got yourself some tubeless tyres, you could have a complete tubeless setup on there without a problem. Tubeless tyres and obviously tubeless valves you're going to need for that. So this has actually got a boost spacing hub on, that does run from a through axle. I think it's the Suntour, I want to say quick lock. Am I right in that? Don't know. Don't know. I can double check that and we'll correct it if need be. Okay, let's see if we can lift the bike out now. Oh, there we go. I do hope this is the right size too. I had a bit of bother with a bike that I bought from Chain Reaction before I got my Vitus Summit VR. It was the Escarp 2019 model Escarp, so the blue one. Just trying to see if there's anything else in here. Not that I can see, bro. Okay, yeah, so it's the blue one. I ordered what was supposedly the last medium bike in stock, and it came through and it was a small. They didn't have any mediums left. I had to send it back, and that's when I went for the Summit. So in a way, maybe it was a blessing in disguise. I do love my Vitus Summit, but at the time I was very disheartened. So double check you've got the right size bike. I'm sure that was 1 in a million of them sending the wrong size out. But it's definitely worth checking out, just to make sure you have got the right one. So I'm just trying to make a bit of extra room in here. Right, I'm just going to get rid of this box actually. Okay, I've got the bike stand here. I'm just going to put this saddle in to the frame. I don't know if you can see from there. Can you see? Yo. Yeah, you can, I reckon. Right, I'm just going to pop that in. Activate the quick release, which that saddle has obviously been in there already when I set it up, because I didn't need to adjust that quick release to hold it in place. Now I'm just going to pop this up into the maintenance stand, so we can have a little bit more of a look as to what's going on. Okay, should we get a little bit more height out of that? I think so. There we go. Are we in shot? I think we are. Yeah, wins. Right, so let's just get some of this protection off the frame. One thing I've not seen yet, it might actually be in the fork. Yes, it is. Okay, I was just looking for that that axle for the front wheel, because I hadn't seen it in the box and I hadn't seen it in any of the other bits I've taken out. but I have just located it. It is in the forks, which is good, so that protects the ends of the forks as well. That feels a little bit notchy. Headset bearings feel quite notchy, so I might have to have a look at that in a minute. So basically, Chain Reaction and Wiggle, actually, they're pretty much the same company. I think Chain Reaction Cycles is sister company of Wiggle. I think Wiggle pretty much own the whole lot. They do say that the bike is pretty much ready to ride, so we can check out the gears and check out the brakes, and hopefully they're set ready to go. Nice red colour. It's probably worth having a look over it for scratches and stuff as well. Some people do report that they have scratches on the frame. Obviously it's a mountain bike. Yes, it is going to get scratched up when you're riding it. But if you're anything like me, if it's going to get scratched at all, you want to be the one putting the scratches in it. You don't want it turning up with scratches in. To be honest with you, you wouldn't put up with it with a new car. Or anything else new in that matter. You don't want scratches and marks all over it. So just double check over that paintwork and just see how it's looking. It does look nice. Yeah. Any of you got a Nucleus VRS? Let us know what you think of your bike and if you've actually done any upgrades to it since you've purchased it. I am going to be moving some of my upgrades across from my Voodoo Hoodoo onto this one. I've got an XT drivetrain group set, 1x11 that'll be going on, and I've also got XT brakes that'll be going on there. Just because I spent some money on those parts and they're still more than usable, so they'll be going on. The parts from this bike, the Dior 1x10, will be going on the Voodoo, and as will the brakes. I don't know what brakes it's shipped with actually. They do say it's either going to be Tektro or Clark's, and I would say these look like Clark's. Can't actually see, they've got a red bolt in the other side of the caliper, and I think that's the Clark's setup. So yeah, they'll be going on the Voodoo as well. So they'll be going with brand new brakes and a brand new drivetrain group set. I'm wondering actually, this, like I say, that headset, I'm turning it and it is not exactly smooth. Let's put it that way. Now I don't know if maybe it's being over torqued from the stem cap. It's a possibility. I think we shall have a look at that just to see what's going on there. God, it's tight. It's very tight. Oh my God, that is massively tight. Why is the stem cap done up like that? Just loosen off the actual stem itself. It's going to be good practice if you're doing this, just to make sure those forks don't fall out. Crikey! Yeah, I don't know why it's done up that much. And I'm fearing I'm going to strip that. That is not awesome. What the hell? Why is it done up like that? Someone done that up as a joke, that tight, because this has been over tight for sure. Now absolutely I do want to get that undone, 100%. I don't know what torque that's been done up to. Shouldn't be that much. Shall we? Oh, there we go. Right. We loosened it off and that is already running a little bit more free. That's quite annoying that that's over tightened, but that's the whole idea. I mean, you need to check over it really. They do say it's ride ready, and yeah, you could go out and ride it, but if it's over tightened like that, you're not going to have much joy. Actually, while I'm here, I'm going to take this off and just see what they're doing in the way of grease in that headset bearing. Let's see what we can maybe find underneath. Yeah, it still feels a bit notchy. Now yours may not be like this. It's not a great start, is it? Spacers, they're falling all over the floor. Use a metal one, you're going to burr it over. Oh, that's running smoother. So I think, can we get that up? I think where it had been over tightened, there we go. There we go. Right, that's coming free. Cool. All the time you hit it, make sure you're supporting the forks. Don't want them slamming out the bottom of the bike. Let's have a look. Right. Okay, so the bottom race of bearings pretty much don't have any grease in. Top race, yeah, there's not a lot in there, so I'm going to pack that out with a little bit more. When you're taking bits off of your headset, remember which way they go. If you're ever unsure, just take a quick photo of it, and that will be your guide when you reassemble. Okay, I'm just gonna, as I say, I'm just gonna pack some grease in there because I don't want to be taking this apart again. Oh, and having to replace them. Not too soon. There we go. Just literally running the grease around the bearings, and quite. I thought there would have maybe been a sealed cartridge in here, but they're not. That might be something that I'm going to change later on, but at the moment there's no problem. There's no problem just making sure they're greased up. I'm going to get these on as well because literally there's one blob of grease on the front and the back's completely dry. So I'm just going to run this all the way around. So it might actually be worth then double checking the bearings in your headset just to make sure they've got grease on them. And I've put plenty there. Any excess you can just wipe off. Okay, so once you've reassembled it, you're probably going to get a little bit which is going to just kind of push it out, if that makes sense. Right, let's just get that in there, shall we? We're probably going to find out that the brakes are all over the place now. I like the brake lines and the gear cables. But let's have a look. So that's pushed up. Get all the other bits that you've taken off, put them back in the same order. Now we've got spacers too. No! Why is it gone over there? Right. Next one, stem. Make sure it's up the right way. And then I'm just going to screw that top cap in, and I can let go of the forks, knowing that they're not going to fall out. There we go. I'm just going to knit that up. There we go. Cool. And now that is moving really smooth. Happy days. Right, so with the stem itself, I'm not actually going to tighten up the bolts that clamp onto the steerer tube of the fork just yet. It's going to be easier to double check that, I think, once the bike's on the ground, and you can check to see if there's any knocking and any play, and you tighten the top cap up a little bit each time until there's just no play there. And then these you'll tighten up once you've not got any play. So I'm going to just try and get the bars in there now. Just give my hands a wipe because I've got grease on them. Okay, so we are going to need to undo those stem bolts at the front. Just 4 of them again, put them down somewhere where you are going to be able to reach them. It's 3 and number 4. I wonder if you can actually spin that round to get the bars in without taking number 4 out completely. Okay, let's get these in. It's upside down, bro. Don't know if they're gonna. Yeah, they're good. Now there's a little line on these bars, again proof neutron bars, which show you supposedly where the centre is. So we're going to go on that and hope that that is kind of correct. No, we are going to need to lose that last bolt as well. I'm not going to do it up too tight, because ideally when you do these bolts up, you need to do them all up an equal amount. Don't do one up and then do the rest, because that's not going to hold your bars properly at all. I'm only just nipping this up at the minute because I'm going to want to try and find a nice angle for my bars. I don't know if they're going to need rolling forward or rolling back. I'm going to also need to want to set up the angle of my brake levers. There we go. So the bars are kind of in position. One thing I will say, do not pull your brake levers. It'd be fine to pull your back one or your rear one, which in the UK is on the left hand side, because you've got your wheel in. Your wheel's there, that's great. You pull that one on the front, on the right for the front brakes, there's no wheel there, so your pads are just going to go. There's a possibility that the pistons will push clear of the calipers, and then you're going to have oil everywhere. So do not pull that one. Not until you've got a wheel in. Talking of which, let's get a wheel in. Okay, so it is a Q-lock in the front of these forks, which is Suntour's own axle system. It's a bit like an old school quick release really. If you just pull that lever down, but then you don't undo it like a quick release. You just push from the other side, and then it should just come out from the forks. Now this is completely dry, so I am actually going to put some grease on that before reassembly. Make sure you don't get any grease at all on your disc rotor, because then your brakes are basically going to be useless, and probably not salvageable either. You may well then find you're going to need to get some new pads and maybe even some new discs. Okay, so now we have grease on the axle. We need to get the wheel in the forks. So make sure you've got your disc rotor the same side as the forks as where your brake caliper is. Just lift that up into position and then slide that Q lock into position and do it up. Like so. Okay, that's probably going to be absolutely fine for a minute. We don't want that done up excessively tight at the moment. As I say, we're going to do a full bolt check once we've sorted other parts out. So next I'm going to move on to the pedals and we can see if the gears are indexed. Okay, so in regards to the pedals, I'm just going to be putting on the supplied pedals for now. These are labelled up with an L and an R. This pedal won't fit on both sides. This pedal will not fit on both sides. You need to make sure you get the right pedal for the right side. So I'm going to start with the R pedal, this being the right hand side of the bike. Just going to put a little bit of grease on the threads. There we go, which will make it easier to screw it in. Let's give that a little spin around. Still got some packaging on there, look, which I've not removed. There we go, right. Let's just go up to the top here. We're going to check the gears in a minute. Something's happened. I don't know what it is. I think it might be some packaging caught between the tyre and the frame. Right, so when you put the pedals in, you want to twist them, make sure you get the right hands. Twist it towards the front of the bike, like so. Now, you want to make sure it goes fairly well by hand, and then when you've got a tool on it to do it up, you don't want to have to really put a lot of effort into it. If you're doing that, it means that you're going to be cross-threaded, and that is not going to be a good recipe. You will end up going for a ride and you will strip the thread in your crank arms and will probably be better off just buying new crank arms at that point. Right, this side's done. Just put a bit of grease on the other one. There we go. Get that side done as well. Again, twisting it towards the front of the bike. Well, from this side to the front, actually from the other side to the front as well. This side it's still clockwise, but if you're going around the other side of the bike to put that left hand pedal on, where you normally do bolts and screws and what have you up to the right to tighten them, the left hand side it's to the left because it has actually got a left handed thread on that side. There we go. So pedals are in. Let's get the rest of this packaging off the frame. 1, 2, cool. There we go. So now we can actually see what's happening with the gears. So apparently we are now in gear 1. Just twist that a little bit like there. There you go. Got a bit more clearance now for the pedal. So just going to start clicking down the gears on the shifter. So that looks good. Let's see if we can go back up the cassette. I would say that's pretty good. Well done, chain reaction. Get them all the way down the bottom. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Now the brakes. So if I move this wheel, get this wheel going, not too fast so you can hear the free hub. You want to be able to hear if that disc is rubbing on the pads. So the disc's here, the pads are inside the caliper. If you hear like a scraping noise, it means it's just going to be out of alignment a little bit. So if that happens, this one seems to be absolutely perfect. If it does happen, if you can pull on the brake lever to lock that rear wheel, and then undo these 2 bolts slightly, you might see the caliper just shift where it's straightening up to the disc. Whilst keeping that brake lever on, you then need to just tighten up these 2 bolts again to have the caliper stay in its new position. You may find that even then it's still going to start rubbing. I don't think we're going to be able to see it here, but down here the pads are here, and if you put something white on the carpet or on the floor, you may well see gaps either side of the rotor. Well, there does need to be an even gap either side of the rotor, so it might just be a case of undoing the bolt slightly, moving it across a tiny bit until you get that straight. But in regards to this rear brake, we are absolutely fine. Now we have the bike sat on its tyres on the ground, we need to set its saddle height. Now, saddle height for pedalling, I have at the top of my thigh, just kind of where my hip is. So when you're on the bike, and you're at the bottom of your pedal stroke, I've got a bit of a bend in my knee there. Now, you don't want it so it's locking out. That's not going to do you much good. You don't want it beyond that, because you're going to start rocking your hips and you're going to end up with some pain. So I have it with a bit of bend in there. I could probably go a bit higher, but then if you're riding some off-road trails, a bit of technical, it's good to have a bit of bend in your knee. And obviously if you've got a dropper seat post, you could have the saddle a tiny bit higher. It all comes down to personal preference, really. Right, so I've set that. Now the next thing to have a look at is the angle of your brake levers. I have chosen a position for my bars. You may feel like you want to roll them forwards or backwards. Again, that's completely up to you. If you've got another bike that you ride, you might be able to kind of replicate the same feeling and the same sort of angle as your other bike. From the pedalling position, so say if you sat down, this is kind of how I set my brakes up. You want to imagine a line coming from your shoulder all the way down your arm to the tip of your fingers. So hold your fingers out, just like that. And that's kind of where you're going to want the brake lever to be. So what I'm going to do there is you want it so you can just rest your finger on top of that brake lever with your finger out, and that is where I like mine to be. So now that's there, I'm just going to nip that up. I'm not going to do it up too tight. It's quite good if you're in a crash and you hit your brakes, the brakes move around the bar. You don't want them so they move easily, because that would be quite dangerous. But if you have an impact, they move around the bar instead of actually causing damage to the brake lever itself. Obviously, I mean, these are 2-finger levers on this bike. You can get some brakes that are 1-finger specific. 2 fingers, not a problem. I still just use 1 finger when I'm braking on the outside or the end of the brake lever. I have my hand quite close to the edge of the bar, maybe just slightly overhanging on the outside. But I have it so that 1 finger is just near the end of the brake lever. And that's how I like it. Obviously you might be different, so have a little bit of a play with that, but that's how I set up the angle. Just imagine that line running from shoulder all the way down to your fingertip. Rest your finger on the brake lever, tighten it up in that position. Okay, so now we want to do a bolt check on the bike in a bit of an M shape really. So we start down here, work our way up, down. You don't want anything to come loose when you're out on the bike. think the last thing now we're going to do, I mean, you could go and ride this straight away, but one more thing you might want to do is just set the forks up for your weights. Now, in the box, one of the manuals that we were supplied with the bike is General Suspension Fork Manual from SR Suntour. Now, it has got quite a bit of useful information in there. It's got air pressure adjust, which going on your weight, it's got weight ranges and a range, PSI range for your actual body weight. It's not going to be amazingly accurate doing it that way. The best way to do set your forks with the right PSI is to actually measure the sag. Now, the sag is when you're sat on the bike in the attack position. So if you're able to lean up against the wall or something, just with your elbow against the wall to steady yourself, feet on both pedals, kind of leaning slightly on the front in the attack position, your forks will sag down a bit under your weight. Now, you want to get that sag, I would say, between 20 and 25%. Now, it's quite tricky on these forks because these forks do not have a marked range. I have done a video on setting your sag. You can actually see that up here right now should you want to. That might apply more so to the forks that you have, but with this bike it actually hasn't got anything there whatsoever. So what I'm going to do is, it hasn't even got a rubber ring like a travel ring. I have actually sent off to get some foam rings for these forks, and also a rubber O-ring which will go around one of the stanchions to show me how much travel I'm using, but I haven't got that yet. That will come in a separate video when I actually upgrade the lubrication method of these forks. So these ones are currently grease only. There's no oil bath in the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn them into an oil method in regards to lubrication. But at the moment, I think the best way for me to do this is I'm actually just going to tie a bit of thread just around one of the stanchions, and this will help us hopefully to see how much sag we've got. Okay, so if we literally, I've just tied that round once, I'm going to slide that down there. Now when you sit on the bike, as I say, I mean, don't jump around on it because obviously it's going to over compress from what you're going to need. Now this is going to be tricky because I haven't got a wall here, so I'm going to use my I'm going to use my tool bench. I'm going to keep the brake on. It's going to move forward a bit like that. Whether that's going to be enough for me or not, I don't know. Now if I sit back on the saddle and get off the bike, you can see that there's now a gap between the string and that part of the fork. Now we need it to be 20%, but we don't actually know how far up the stanchion this fork is going to go. So there is another way to do it. In this manual, I have seen that so there's a 120mm fork. So between, if you want a 20% sag, you want 15mm here. Okay, here we go. We have got 25mm. So we need to get some more air in that fork. Right, let's plonk you there. Hi. So for this, you can't use a normal bicycle pump. That is not going to give you enough pressure into these forks. You're going to need an actual shock pump. I've got one here. This is a RockShox shock pump. It will fit pretty much any fork or shock on your bike if you've got a full suspension. Right, so up here on the left hand side you've got your air valve. So if we unscrew that, This is where you're going to put air into your suspension fork if you've got an air fork. If you've got a coil fork, you can't do this. So I'm just going to connect this in like so. Okay, so on the shock pump we have got 85 psi. I'm going to go to 100 psi. God, it's 100 psi already. If you find actually that you've got too much pressure in the fork and you haven't got enough sag, you haven't got your 20% sag, or in this case what was we talking about, you haven't got your 15 millimeters of travel that it sags down by when you're sat on the bike. This shock pump has a little button here which will allow you to release pressure from the air cartridge itself. Don't poke your finger or a screwdriver or anything onto that valve directly. It's very high pressure. You might get some oil come out of there. It could get you in the eye. You don't want to get hurt. So please, if you've got a shock pump, use the release button on there to remove any air that you don't need in your forks. So now we've done that, that's at 100 psi. I'm just going to slide this back down again. Now let's see if we've got that 15 millimeters of travel, shall we? So here we go, back on the bike. Nice attack position, and then just step off and see what that measurement is at. We have currently got about 18 millimeters. So I'm going to put in a little bit more pressure. Like so. Always take the pump off when you're going to check the sag. Because this tube is pressurized and it's rubber, and if you sit on it and the tube flexes a bit, it's not going to give you a true sag reading. Okay, let's try again. Where are we at? Okay, it's the same story. Attack position. Sit back on the saddle, try and get off without bouncing that fork around. We're at 110 psi now, and we have got 10, so we've got too much in there. It's just a game of trial and error really at this point. So we've got 110 in. If we go down to 105 psi, we can take one more reading and hopefully that'll be somewhere near. Okay, that is actually now down at 105, where I've disconnected and reconnected, and it's probably gone down a little bit more as I've just disconnected it from there. Here we go. Let's try again. Okay, what have we got there now? That looks like it might be somewhere near. Whoa, that's 14 millimeters, and do you know what? That's good enough for me. So now, that's pretty much, that's it, it's set, the bike is set. It's ready to ride. Although there's one thing that I haven't checked, and down here, this bike has actually got a clutch derailleur. Okay, it's got Shimano Dior 1x10. and it's got a clutch set in here, and that seems very loose. You see how that's slapping around. I'm just going to put that, I think that's in the on position that way actually. There you go, that's way tighter. So when you're riding off-road, it's good to have your clutch on, and it should helpfully help to stop the bike from being too noisy where the chain's slapping on your chainstay. You don't have to have the clutch on. It will probably shift a tiny bit easier with the clutch off, but I always have the clutch on my bike, even if I'm just riding on roads, because next time you go off road and you've not got your clutch on, you're going to start possibly taking chunks out of your chainstay. I mean, this has got a chainstay protector on it, but I like a nice quiet bike, and I'm sure most people probably do. Well, that's it. The video has now come to an end. I certainly do hope you've managed to get your bike from boxed to ride ready with me today. If you found this video useful, please go and give it a thumbs up like, so others just like yourself can find it more easily. Whilst you're down there, please also consider subscribing so you don't miss out on any future content. I am going to be doing some upgrades to this bike, bringing them across from the Voodoo, and also sorting the forks out like I've mentioned a little bit earlier on. So until next time, spacers, they're falling all over the floor.